Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Joining us in studio, it is election 2020, and that means up and down the ballot we go, bringing in candidates and hearing from the different candidates running for office. And the first local candidate to join us on the program here in 2020, Tom Brummett, candidate for the 140th District Court here in Lubbock County. And Mr. Brummett, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Appreciate being here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, tell folks a little bit about your background and what made you decide to run for this court.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name is Tom Brummett. I was born here in Lubbock, grew up on the Texas coast down near Corpus Christi. Went to Texas Tech, got my undergrad there, but went to law school in Indiana University. I went there to get my law degree, met my wife, and just felt a real pull to come back to this area. This is where my heart is. These are where the people I love are located. Came back here, and I've been serving the community for the past 17 years as an assistant district attorney in the Lubbock DA's office.
Okay. For those who may not know much about the 140th District Court, explain that.
Well, there are three courts in Lubbock that handle felony criminal cases. There's a 137th, 140th, 364th. And it's funny. I've had people come up to me and say, well, the 140th district, am I in your district? Yes, that the district for that court is all of Lubbock County. And so I said felony cases, that's everything from car theft, state jail felony, third degree, second degree, first degree, all the way up to capital murder. You were talking about capital murder case earlier this morning. Those are the kind of cases that court would hear. And that's what, if I was elected judge, I'd be responsible for making sure proceeded justly.
Yeah. And so when it comes down to judicial races and in a race like this, what should voters, and obviously you're here to talk about yourself, but what do voters need to look for in a judge?
Well, the first thing I think is important is for people to understand that when you look at our governmental system and the way it was set up with a preference for local races, local elections, and our fathers wanted a nexus between the people that elected their public officials and where the office was. And what I mean is we get a lot of attention, a lot of news of what's going on in D.C., what's going on in Austin. I mean, those things affect us, but it seems that those get a disproportionate amount of attention as to local races. And those decisions, those candidates are, number one, where people have a bigger opportunity to make a difference in the selection. I mean, smaller number of voters, etc. And number two, those candidates are going to be making the day-to-day decisions, and regardless of what capacity they serve, that's going to mean the most difference to people living in a Lubbock community, you know, the 300 and something thousand people here. And so the first thing that I would say people need to do is educate themselves. Who are these people? Why does one judicial candidate matter more than another? And what I would tell them is you want somebody with proven experience. Like I said, I have served the people of Lubbock County for 17 years. I've been pursuing justice. And if we have time, we can talk about what that means, but have been pursuing it on their behalf this entire time. So you need somebody that understands that has enough experience, and I appear in that court and in every criminal court in Lubbock County, so I'm familiar with the day-to-day operations and what the job entails, and knowing and trusting that those people are going to make decisions that result in the type of community that people in Lubbock want to live in.
Right. You were when you announced your candidacy for the 140th District Court. You had said in an interview, and I believe it was with KCBD, that you kind of wanted to expand the role of that court. What does that mean? Well,
what I was talking about is my personal role. One of the things, and this is funny, people have this perception, oh, well, somebody that served as a criminal prosecutor, your job is to put people in jail. And my answer to that is, well, sometimes, if you look at the Code of Criminal Procedure, it says that a state's attorney's job is to see that justice is done. And it's funny when you compare it with other states, you see language like seek justice or pursue justice. Well, Texas being Texas, we have to be a little different. And it's like, no, you see that justice is done. Now, what does justice mean? Different things to different people, right? I mean, somebody that's been accused of a crime, justice has one meaning. Somebody that's prosecuting a crime, justice has enough. A juror may have another view of justice. Sometimes dangerous people that represent great potential for harm, justice can mean incarceration for a long time. That's at the top. In some instances, when a jury finds that it's necessary, that can even result in somebody being executed on a criminal case. But there are a lot of other things. There can be community supervision. There can be what they call deferred adjudication programs. There can be referrals to what we call specialty courts. And if we have time, I can talk about my formative role in those. Justice means a lot of different things. And what you want is somebody that's been doing this long enough that understands what to take into consideration on what that result of justice needs to be. What is best for the community? What is best for the individual before the court, and what is best to not just seek it, not pursue it, but to make sure that justice is done in that case. And I believe that I'm the best candidate for folks to do it in that court, in that race.
Talk about the specialty courts that you just mentioned there.
Sure. Lubbock has several of them. There's a what they call a drug court, DWI court. There's the Freedom Court. They all kind of go under the general label of specialty courts. For the DWI court, we set it up in 2007. Two members that are on that court that are still there is myself and a defense attorney named Rick Waldrop. We were there from the beginning. And what that does is it takes people that say, listen, I have a long-term substance abuse problem. These are not, first-time tech kids running into a DWI because they weren't experienced with alcohol. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about hardcore alcoholics with criminal justice involvement. And we realized, okay, you know what? I can send this person to the pen for 10 years. You know what I'm going to get? A 10-year older alcoholic. And what we did is we set up a program that allows those people to have the strictest, most intensive supervision that is in Lubbock County. Listen, Chad, I'm not an alcoholic, and I don't know if I can make this program. It is tough. You hear people talk about things like, oh, it's slap on the wrist or hug a thug programs. They don't know what they're talking about, and I'll be willing to set them straight anytime they want to discuss it with me. And those people are watched under a microscope that, number one, ensures the safety of the community, and they're not going to go out and hurt or kill somebody, but gives them an opportunity and that motivation to prove that they can get on top of that. We have over 200 participants in the program up to this point, and I can guarantee you that the recidivism rate blows away traditional community involvement or traditional jurisprudence.
Visiting with Tom Brummett, candidate for the 140th District Court here in Lubbock County. I guess as we wrap up this interview with you, we'll have you on, I'm sure, a couple of more times before the election.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. I guess, tell folks kind of what your, when you look at the law, when you look at the Constitution, when you look at those, what is your basic ideas about the Constitution, about law? How do you look at those?
There's a saying that the law's majesty is that it applies to everyone equally, from the king in his bed to the beggar in the streets. And we all talk about these things about being equal before the law, and people give a lot of lip service to that, but that needs to be a reality. Because if we want people to respect our institutions and we want people to feel like the government is for them, then we need to show that those principles are there. And what I can do in my part to promise is everybody that walks in that courtroom will be treated with dignity and respect. And regardless of what my personal feelings are, regardless of whether I think a particular law that the legislature has passed is right, wrong, just, or unjust, it is the law. And a judge's personal feelings do not matter. There are instances where the judge has a lot of discretion, but the law controls. And what I can promise is no matter what personal feelings may or may not be involved, the law will be followed, and the letter of the law will always be ruling supreme in that courtroom.
What are your overall thoughts on, there's been a big push on the right and some on the left too for criminal justice reform. You've seen a lot of it in Texas. The president has made a big deal of criminal justice reform. What are your overall thoughts on that? Are we going in the right direction? Because there are some people who are a little iffy on criminal justice reform, and they're worried that we're just going to open the floodgates, let everybody out of jails. What is your overall philosophy on that?
Well, again, like justice can have many definitions. Reform also has many definitions. Yeah. I mean, that means different things to different people. Lubbock is interesting because the people I've talked to and growing up here, you think it's conflicting, but people here have a respect for law enforcement. They have a respect for justice. They want to see people that have broken the law punished appropriately, but they also are very suspicious of government action. They want the rules to be followed, and they want people to have all of those constitutional protections, right of incrimination, proper counsel, things like that. They want the rules to be followed. You would think that those are from different ends of the spectrum, and they're not. because we can make sure that all those protections are in place, but if those rules are followed, that those appropriate sentences are being handed out. Don't know if that really answers your question, but with criminal reform, I think if you're talking about just taking a one-handed approach to treat everybody the same way,
right.
I know that needs to be addressed. Now, what's nice about Texas is, unlike most other states and the federal system, we don't have sentencing guidelines. Judges in Texas are given an amazing amount of discretion. You look at a first-degree felony, 5 years to 99 or life, and everything in between. Some people say that's too much discretion. I say no, it just represents the amount of trust and input that the people need to have in who they're choosing to be their judges.
Do you have a website?
I do. It would be just my name, Tom Brummett, TOMBRUMMETT, 2 M's, 2 T's, tombrummett.com. I'm also very easy to find on Facebook and Twitter, and you can always get a hold of me there, and I'll answer any questions anybody has.
Very good. Tom Brummett, candidate for the 140th District Court here in Lubbock County. Appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right.